Chapter 5, Day 4. I'd like you to try this warm-up, which reviews some of the things we've been working on in Chapter 5 so far, including rate of change. And so I would like you to take a look at this table. It actually, this is a table of days and inches of rainfall. But go ahead and, not as important, but tell me whether you think the data table represents a linear function, and then also the rate of change from x equals 4 to x equals 12, and also from x equals 1 to x equals 12. So go ahead and pause the video and try these questions right now, and then restart the video to see if you are understanding what we have worked on so far. So, this does not, in fact, represent a linear function because there is not a constant change in the x's and y's. The x's are going up +3, +4, +4, and the y's are doing the same thing. So even though the changes are the same, they're not constant for the x's and constant for the y's, so it's not a linear function. For question number 2, the rate of change from x equals 4 to x equals 12, you need to look at from here over to here. So you need to look at this time interval, which I've done in red. And when you do that, the change from 6 to 14, the change in the y values is 14. So it changed 4 inches in 8 days, so that's 1 inch per day. And then the second time interval you need to look at is from 1 to 12. And if you look at how many inches it changed from 3 to 14 is 11, and it's still in 11 days, so you still have 1 inch per day. So those two increases were the same. So in this section or lesson, we are going to graph lines given the slope and the y-intercept, or an equation in slope-intercept form. And we're also going to write equations in slope-intercept form from a graph or being given that information. So think about, what do you know about slope-intercept already? See if you can pause the video and write a few things down about what you remember from slope-intercept form. Then start the video and we'll continue on talking about this. All right. So now, what you knew about slope-intercept. Can you match any of these equations with the correct graph? Think about what the clues are that you've learned and know about slope-intercept form. If you don't know any of these, that's fine. But if you do, take a guess. See if you can guess which equation matches with which, or at least a couple of them. Pause the video, and then you can restart to listen and find out if you got them correct. Okay, well, if you remember things about this right here is the slope of 2 and the y-intercept of 1. So the first thing I look for is the y-intercept, and that is where the graph crosses this axis, the y-axis. That's the clue we're looking for. And we're looking for it to cross the y-axis at 1. And if you look at this, there is only one graph that crosses the y-axis at 1. Okay, so that is really all we need to know, that this is graph A, or y equals 2x plus 1. So even if you just look at that clue for this particular one, then you will see that. For the next question, for letter B, we're looking at where does it cross at -2. So again, look at your clue. This is the y-axis. This is crossing at -2. So that would be letter B, because that is our y, or f of x, equals -1/3 x minus 2. So that is our clue. So hopefully that was helpful for you, just as a little bit of explanation. And then the slope is how fast it's changing, rise over run, remember. And then we can look at that graph as far as slope being positive, -0, or undefined. So hopefully you got some of these correct, but just to fill in the rest of these for you to check, this graph right here is letter C. And this graph right here is letter D. All right, so today we're going to also be talking about x and y intercepts. So the y-intercept is the point where the graph crosses the y-axis. And this point right here, okay, is always an ordered pair where the x value right here is 0 and the y value is, I've got this wrong, excuse me. Let's start over. So it's where it crosses the y-axis, and where did I have that? I had it crossing the x-axis. That's the x-intercept. So here is our dot right here where it is crossing that y-axis. That is our y-intercept. And that will always be a point where our x value is 0 and our y is a value. So in this particular example, the y-intercept is -2. Or we can write that as an ordered pair. What ordered pair is that? That's 0, -2. The x-intercept is the point where the graph intersects the x-axis. So that is this point right here, and that point, the y value is always 0. So in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Our x-intercept we can say is 6, or again we can list that as an ordered pair, and that is the ordered pair where x is 6 and y is 0. So your intercepts, one piece of the ordered pair is always 0. So equations for linear functions are often written in what is called slope-intercept form. And we use the variable m to represent slope, and we have y equals mx plus b, where b is our y-intercept. So our y-intercept goes at the end. It's just a plain old number. Our slope, remember, is our rise over run, so that is typically a fraction, but doesn't have to be. And we can get that from the graph, or we can get that from the ordered pairs. So let's practice one together, and then you'll try one by yourself. It says, graph the line given the slope and the y-intercept. So we plot the y-intercept. We are given that the y-intercept is 2. So it's going to cross the y-axis right here. Remember, this is our y-intercept at 2. So 1, 2, there is where our line is going to cross the y-axis. Then we graph the slope from that point. So we are going to graph the slope, which in this case our slope is -3. Again, that's the rise over run. Well, what's our run when there's nothing underneath the fraction or underneath the whole number? Remember, we use that 1. -3 is the same as -3 over 1. So we start at this point right here, and we are going to rise -3, which means we are going down 3. So 1, 2, 3. Our run is 1. It's positive, so it's going to the right. And oftentimes I'm going to do it twice so that when I draw my line through the 2 points, that my line will be a little bit straighter. Keep in mind, you can also actually do the opposite for your slope of -3 over 1. You could also have 3 over -1. That's the same as -3, which means I can rise 3, and now I can go to the left 1 for -1. And when I draw this line, that is my linear function. Now, you try this one on your own. So on your own, you are going to plot that y-intercept, and you are going to graph the slope and then draw the line through. So go ahead and pause the video, try that question, and see if you can repeat the process that we just did. Maybe you want to look back to what we did and see if you can do that. Okay, you should have plotted the y-intercept at -1, and your slope is up 1 over 2. Or you could go, remember, -1 over -2, that's the same as 1 over 2. So we could go down and left, and then we draw our line through that graph. All right, so here is just a different situation, because now it's really the same idea, but we have been given the equation and not the graph. So remember, This is our m, and this is our b, because this comes from the equation y equals mx plus b. So all we really need to do is pick out our slope, which in this case is 2, or 2 over 1, and we pick out our y-intercept, which is -3. So now we can graph that. Here's where -3 is, and then we can use our slope to go up 2, right 1. They're both positive, so you go up and to the right, which is the positive direction. Connect your points. Since it's an equation, we can have all different values of x and it's continuous. So your turn, you are going to try number 2 right here. This one's a little bit tricky. See what you can do with it. See what you remember. Pause the video and see if you can graph it on this same grid. All right, your slope for this is actually, there's a 1 in front. So your slope for this is -1, or -1 over 1. Your y-intercept, there isn't one. Well, yes, there is, because there really could be a +0. Your y-intercept is 0. So my y-intercept is 0, and my slope is going down 1 to the right 1, down 1 to the right 1. And so here is my line for number 2. And this one is number 1. All right, so now we're going to do a different skill, a third skill, which is really taking the information that we have and putting it into the equation y equals mx plus b. So remember that your m right here is your slope. So when you know your slope, you're going to put it in for m. And your b right here is your y-intercept. So all we have to do to write the equation is go ahead and pick out, we already have our slope, we already have our y-intercept, so we can plug them in. So this is -3, I'm just rewriting them here. And our slope is 2. So to write the equation, I'm going to write y equals mx plus b. Again, my m, my slope is 2, and my y-intercept is plus my y-intercept, which happens to be -3. And I don't need that plus in there, but it's fine to include it. All right, your turn to try this question right here, number 2. See if you can fill in the slope and the y-intercept and write the equation into slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. Pause the video and then see if you have it correct. So what you really have is y equals 10. Now, if you're wondering, how did you get that? Well, we know our slope is 0 and we know our y-intercept is 10. So when we start writing this, we write y equals m, or 0x, plus 10. But what is 0 times x? That's just 0. And so that just cancels out and we get y equals 10. All right, let's try a few more. Try these 2 questions. Pause the video right now and then see if you can do these 2 questions and write the equations. Restart the video to see if you got those questions correct. All right, my slope here is -3/7. My y-intercept is -9. So you should have y equals -3/7 x minus 9, or plus a -9. Here your slope is 9 and your y-intercept is 0. So you get y equals 9x plus 0. Again, we don't need that 0, so it's more common that we would just write y equals 9x. Okay, so in the last couple examples, they gave you the slope and the y-intercept. Now you have to pick them out from the graph, which is not that difficult to do. Remember, we did this before. Pick any 2 points on the graph. And do you rise or fall here? Well, you're going down, so you fall -3. How far are you going over? 1, 2, 3 spaces. You're going to the right, so it's positive. This was negative, so you get -3 over +3, so your slope is -1. What is your y-intercept? Well, I used it for one of my points, and my y-intercept is 2. So now when I write the equation of that line, it would be y equals negative 1x plus 2, or simply y equals negative x plus 2. Either one is fine. All right, now it's your turn to try this one. So see if you can find the slope, the y-intercept, and then write the equation. Pause the video, then restart to see if you got it correct. Okay, our y-intercept right here is negative 3. Our slope, if I pick another point, is going a rise of 2 and a run of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my slope is 2/5, and my y-intercept is negative 3, so I get y equals 2/5 x minus 3, or plus a negative 3. That's the same. Now, what about this one? Let's do this one together. All right, so we have a slope. What is our slope? Well, you might remember already, maybe you memorized, but what is the slope of this? How far do you rise? Well, you don't. And how far do you run? Well, I ran 5 over in this case, from going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but my rise is 0. So my slope is 0. Remember, all horizontal lines, the slope is 0. What is your y-intercept? Well, my y-intercept is negative 5. So what does that equation look like? Well, it looks like y equals 0x minus 5. But again, what is 0 times x? It's just 0. So our equation becomes y equals negative 5. And all horizontal lines go through the y-axis right here. So all horizontal lines are always y equals lines. These will always be y equals whenever you have a horizontal line. And it's whatever value, it's where you're crossing that y-axis. And if you think about the ordered pairs on this line, this ordered pair right here is negative 5, 0. This ordered pair right over here is, this is positive 5, 0. This ordered pair over here is negative 5, 0. Okay, this ordered pair over here, that is the ordered pair 10, 0. Notice, oh my goodness, hold on, all of the y values here are 5, negative 5. So this is, I named this ordered pair wrong. This is negative 5, negative 5. This is 5, negative 5, and this is 10, negative 5. And so when you have the equation y equals negative 5, what you're seeing is that the y values are always negative 5 on that line, and that's why we call it y equals that value. All right, here's another one. Not as tricky, okay? But see if you can write the equation for this graph. Okay, the slope for this graph right here is going from one point, pick another point right here. Your slope is going up 1, and it's going over 1, 2, 3, 4. So your slope is 1/4. Your y-intercept is 0, so your equation should look like y equals 1/4 x. Because that plus 0, we don't need that. We just cancel out, and we just get y equals 1/4 x. All right, I have a little exit slip that I would like you to try. So I would like you to see what you know from these questions. I would like you to try them. So you're going to graph 2 lines, and then you're going to write the equation of the graph and using the slope and y-intercept. So I would like you to do this question, and then I would like you to check the notes to see if you have the answer correct. I'm not going to explain this one on the video. I want you to try to check the notes and then refer back to what you've done in this lesson for support and help. So this is the end. After you do the exit slip, this is the